So we're going to start today with the general purpose foot that comes with the machine. So this is the general purpose foot. It has an open slot that'll go to 7 millimeters wide, and the back of it is flat. This is a good one that I like to use to check my feed dogs. So I don't know if you can see, let's get the angle just right. You can see it's got slight scratches on the bottom, and that's normal. This is a good one to check your feed dogs that they're correctly working, because it's normal to have scratches on the back of this foot, especially if you're a quilter, because when you're a quilter, you usually start stitching over here. So that means these feed dogs are scratching the bottom of the foot, and that's okay. But what you want to look for is you want to make sure it's not gouging, making deep grooves in here. If you're getting gouging, that means you got too much pressure being put on by the presser foot or the ankle. There's too much. They would have to raise it up a little bit. Although some machines you can raise it manually, but that means the default is a little too much. Now, it's another issue if you see scratches on one side and nothing on the other side. That means it's not sitting flat on the feed dogs, and you'll notice it because your fabric's going to want to veer to one side or the other. So the other thing we have here is we have the little button, and we'll explain what the button. Anybody not know what this button does? Because I think
Absolutely wondered.
You have wondered, okay. So what it is, if you are sewing, say, flat felled seams, and I'm just going to make this kind of big, okay. If you are sewing like over a hump, see how this is tilting up? If it's tilting too high up, the needle's going to hit the back of the plate and you're going to break a needle. On the other hand, when you start to go down, like off of that, what happens is, well, not on this machine, it seems to stay level. It mostly goes on the up. But the problem is if it does go down, again, it's going to hit the back of the plate and it's going to break a needle. So what you can do is this. You can sew as you lower your, put it at the level position, push the button in, lower your presser foot, and see now it's not wanting to tilt up. It's just going straight. This is like the other machines, it's telling me. And see now, and then when it's off, then it released. Did you see that button pop out? So that's what it is. It's a leveler. That's what it's for, is to level. And if I go the other way, same thing. See, that's going up and it's dangerously close to breaking the needle. So I'm going to put this flat, engage that, put the presser foot down. And now I can stitch and it's going to stay straight. And see, as soon as it releases the pressure, then it goes back to, it pops out automatically. So that's what that leveling pin is for. This can be used for several things. It's your general purpose foot. It's for straight stitching or for some very light zigzaggy stitches. It's not designed to have a lot of thread buildup underneath, like for the decorative stitches. On this machine, you can also see it's telling me to use the J foot. If I'm using a decorative stitch, it's going to tell me to use the N foot, and we'll come to that later. This is my stitch width. Stitch width 0, 0. Unless you're doing a zigzag, it's a straight stitch. When you're on a straight stitch, which means it's on one of these 4 stitches, first 4 stitches, which is your left needle position with a reverse, a left needle position with a locking stitch, which is what that dot means, or you have center needle position with a back stitch or a triple stitch. You can also, if you change the width of it, it doesn't mean it's the width of the stitch, it's the needle position. When it's in the 0, 0 position, if you look at the needle is in the leftmost position. Okay, if I use the leftmost position of the foot against the edge of the fabric and I sew it, and I use this part as my guide, this should give me a 1/2 inch stitch. It is measuring 1/2 inch seam allowance. That's at 1/2 inch. So, okay, if I wanted 5/8 inch, okay, I have to use the guide. The reason these machines have it at left needle position as a 1/2 inch is because that's pretty much what's used in the commercial world. They don't use seam guides and stuff in factories. So the width of the 1/2 inch foot, or it's the same thing as 1 centimeter, then that gives you a good seam allowance. A lot of times if you're ever putting in a sleeve, and you know how you have to ease in the sleeve and it wants to gather, if you use a 1/2 inch seam as versus a 5/8 inch seam, which is what we all grew up using, you're going to find that it's going to go in easier. For some reason, that less than 1/8 inch on the seam is going to cause it to give you easier to stitch the sleeve, or anytime you do a curve, use a 1/2 inch seam instead of 5/8, and it's just, you'll have a lot fewer problems. If you like to sew in center needle position, which is what we're used to sewing, and the reason we're used to sewing is because the Singer foot had the indent right in the center, right here. It would sort of curve in like this, sort of like the end foot does, so that it was easier to find the center, and that is going to give us, let's see how big that seam is. And I will measure that. And it is a 3/8 inch seam. So if I measure between here and here, it's 3/8 of an inch. Now, if you're a quilter, we use 1/4 inch seams. We have a 1/4 inch foot, but say you go to a retreat or whatever, go to a class, and you forget the 1/4 inch foot, you have a setting here. Let's look at this up here. My settings here. For center needle position, 4.0 means it's center needle position. If I want it to be a 1/4 inch seam, now these machines, let's see, I can't remember how I go through. Let me find a piecing. There. I think that's right there. Yes. If your machine has this P stitch, that means it has moved the the needle over to 1/4 inch of that same right side. That measurement is 5.5 width. If I move this to 5.5, that is now giving me 1/4 inch from the edge. Okay, so I'm going to go. This is now 1/4 inch from here. Yes, this is 1/4 inch. You can see that there's the 1/4 inch mark. It is 1/4 inch from, now if you want it to be a scant 1/4 inch, guess what? Move it over to 6, and now it's going to be a scant 1/4 inch. It's just moved over a little bit shorter than the 1/4 inch. Yeah, see how it's like one little notch over? Yeah.
But you started at the left-hand position, correct?
Right, my needle is
Right.
right, it's, yes, at 7, when it's at all the way over to 0, 0. See, here's 0, 0. And then as I move it over, this is, let's say 4. Yeah, 4, or 3. Or is it 3? No, it's 3.5. 3. I take that back. Center needle position, the width is 3.5. Then when you want it on 1/4 inch from this edge, then it's 5.5. Like going forward, this is my center needle position. That's it. It doesn't show it here, but on the Destiny, it'll show you that this would be 3.5. If you pick the, find it, the P foot right there, that is 1/4 inch, and see, it is 5.5. If you want it to be a scant 1/4 inch from here, you do move it over to 5.5. That being said, I'm going to go back. If I am using the 1/4 inch foot, okay, here is the 1/4 inch foot. It is just like the J foot, and you can see it's got the same scratches right here that I have before. But if you use this foot, then you have to use center needle position. Okay, so as I look at the foot, right now it's at center needle position. But if I go back to left needle position, I'm going to hit metal. Right there, it's going to hit metal. And then if I have it's in center needle position, it's going right down the middle. And with this one, you can use the single hold straight stitch plate. They don't make one for this machine. The other problem I have with this machine is that I don't use the 1/4 inch foot with this machine routinely, because inevitably I will put the foot on, forget that it's in left needle position, because this one does not allow you to save it into memory. This is guaranteed that that setting is going to break a needle, because it's going to hit the foot every time. And that's why I don't like it. Every time I turn it on, I use this, and I inevitably forget that it doesn't save it into memory, because all my other machines, I have this number default stitch set at 5 at the this center needle position at 3.5, so it always use it. This machine does not have a memory feature. Well, while we have the 1/4 inch foot here, let's talk about what the 1/4 inch foot can do. And let's take a look at it. This is center needle position on your machine. You're going to use this side as your 1/4 inch. So instead of lining it up with the edge, you line it up here. But what I do like this foot for is this is 1/4 inch, this is 3/8 of an inch, and I like to do my binding with a 3/8 inch seam, so when I'm sewing my binding on, I don't have to change the foot, but instead of guiding my fabric right here, I'm going to guide my fabric right here, and that gives me 3/8. The other thing it has on here is it has these little divot marks right here. This means if your needle is here and you're going to pivot or do the edge of the binding or whatever, and you need 1/4 inch when you're going to pivot, if your fabric is right here, then it is 1/4 inch distance from this needle. Here's your 1/8, it's 1 inch, 1/4 inch before the needle, or 1/8 of an inch before the needle, 1/8 of an inch behind the needle. And this one right here, it's hard to see it, but this is 1/4 inch behind the needle. So, you know, when you're doing a corner, so when you're sewing your corner, say you were putting on binding, okay, you didn't have, we usually mark it, and so when your needle hits that mark, you stop, but you know, we always miss it. So you can take your fabric, as soon as my fabric hits, one more, right there. It's hard to see it, but that fabric is right there, even with that notch. Okay, and now when I can pivot at 1/4, and see, it gives me that 1/4 inch right from the edge. So it does help. So that's a nice thing to use with. I do like the 1/4 inch foot. There's another one that they have that has a metal guide on the side. Right here, it has like a little metal plate like that that sticks out. It's called 1/4 inch seam with with guide. I don't like that foot. I'm not any more accurate on that than I am with following the edge. And in fact, it's usually worse, because I will end up shoving the fabric against that guide, and I end up with more than 1/4 of an inch every time. So it's not something I like. I don't like the 1/4 inch foot with guide, so I don't have one. So, okay, let's go on to the next foot. Let's talk now about the end foot, also called the monogramming foot. This is the end foot, and a lot of people will use this and never change the foot out and just use this to sew seams. It's not a good idea to sew the seams because on the reverse of it, it has this dug out channel, and that's to when you're doing a decorative stitch, if you've got, it'll help glide over top of the thread buildup in the decorative stitch. But if you're doing a straight stitch, you're getting flagging. If you have flagging going on, if say you have no support underneath, so this is holding, this one is holding the back of the foot against the plate. Here we go. Okay, it's holding flat back here to support the needle coming out of the fabric. But when you have the end foot, it's going to you'll be able to see it move. Let me see if I can hold this and do it so you can see it. See how that fabric is moving just a little bit in the back? That can keep your straight stitch from looking good. It also can cause more puckering. So this is not a good thing to use for regular seaming because of that channel, that channel thing that's going on in the back. And it's center, if you use center needle position, this right here is your guide. So yes, there's the center needle position right there. It will accommodate up to a 7mm wide stitch. Some of the Berninas and some of the other machines have a 9mm, which means this slot is even wider. With most of these machines, if you have a straight stitch needle plate right here, then what happens is it's not going to allow you to use a decorative stitch. You're going to have to change the plate no matter what foot you have on there. Okay, so this one is good for decorative stitches. There we go. Okay, now if I select a zigzag, there's my regular zigzag stitch. It's telling you to use the J foot. For a regular zigzag, that's fine because the default zigzag, here's the default stitch, the default zigzag is a loose stitch. There's no thread buildup. Okay, and so you get a nice stitch. It's fine on the back as well. Of course, I have embroidery bobbin thread in there. That's why it's not quite right. If you wanted it to be the same, you would have to play with the tensions for this. But if I change this to an end foot, it doesn't know. It's still going to say J foot on there. And it's probably going to do that default stitch equally well. Actually, you take a look at it. This one's done with the J foot. It's a fairly open stitch. It's not a lot of buildup. But look what's happening with the exact same stitch using the J foot. See how I'm getting some tunneling? So I probably don't like that, which is, it's going to allow, because that's open underneath, it's going to allow for tunneling. Now, how to counteract that? Put over top of a stabilizer, which is why I'm using the same stitch. Let's see. Okay, see, now I'm not getting any tunneling, which means with decorative stitches, you're going to want to use stabilizer underneath using a tear away or a wash away. You can even use paper. In the old days, we used to do decorative stitches over top of paper. It would be a little linty. You'd have to clean out your machine. But you can use just regular bond paper underneath there and it'll give you a nice stitch and it's easy to remove. So I'm going to, let's pick a stitch here.
Do you think the N plus foot would make any difference there?
No, it's still open underneath. The N plus foot, I believe, is
It-
just longer or wider, or it's longer, so it gives better control when it does the side to side action. So here's some more. Well, heck, let's go back and pick these heavy, heavy zigzags. I'm going to make this really tight. Okay, this is a pattern zigzag, which is a heavy satin stitch. And if I were using the J foot, this would jam. So I'm just going to go ahead and stitch that. And let's see what it looks like. Okay, that's enough. Okay, see, it gave me a nice even stitch. It's not tunneled. I did use a stabilizer. This would, without the stabilizer underneath, this would tunnel like crazy. But now we can do the same, I can do the same stitch. And this time the machine told me to use the N foot, but let's see what happens if I use this foot with the J, or this stitch with the J foot. See if it gives me the same thing. It's jammed. Okay, you saw how that, now it's jammed. Yeah, see it jammed right there and made a mess. It got stuck. So unless it's got that channel underneath, the threads can't pass and it jams. So now there is a version of this foot called the open toe. Up until recently, the open toe foot was plastic and I didn't like it. So I had an extra N foot and I just popped out the plastic. And it works. They now have a metal N foot that you can purchase. It is exactly like this, but the only difference is that this is solid metal. It doesn't have that indent, but it has absolutely no effect on the operation of the foot. So I like my old N foot. It's nice wide. I can see it's nice and sturdy. So it works the same, but it allows you to see what you're doing. Let's see, let's do that same stitch and see if it gives us any change, if that little plastic piece makes any difference. Okay, no, it didn't have any change. There's the one with the open toe, and here's the one with the regular N foot, and they're exactly the same. But what I like about the open toe is I can see what I'm doing. When I use the open toe mostly is if I'm doing an applique here, and I will maybe make it 0.4. Okay, so I like to see where the swing of the zigzag, and with the N foot, it's harder to see. There's the left swing of my zigzag. I want to see it so that I know exactly where it is at all times, so that when I go to turn a corner, and go just beyond about the width of the, and then turn. Now 0.4 is a little too zigzaggy for my liking for applique, but you get the idea. So it allows me to see where that needle is at all times. That's why I like the open toe. I like my open toe on my serger too. I'm just nosy. I got to see everything. Can you use this one to do the same thing? Yes, but it's a lot harder to see the needle. Okay. So on the zigzag, it's going to tell you that it wants a J foot, but use the N foot and ignore the machine. What it tells you. Okay, next foot. Let's do the overcasting foot here, which is using the G foot. It's pretty much the same as the J foot as far as flat on the bottom. It does have the addition of this little metal bar right in the middle. And what that does is it holds up the fabric in a flat space without it being tunneled in and dragged in. When I pick stitches, I've got, is that an overcast? Yes, this one, and this one, and I think this one. Yeah, this one, those three are overcast stitches. If you use that with the J foot. Okay, I'm going to use it using the J foot. I'm just going to take one end and I'm going to try and eyeball it so that it does the default stitch. So you want the, oh, it's scalloping. Okay. Okay, see how right here it's just dipping in a little bit. So if you've got a really, this one's heavily starched, but if you had a softer piece of fabric, this one hasn't been starched. Let's see if it changes. Get over there. Try to find the end. Let me make it wider just so it'll exaggerate a little bit so you can see it. Get longer stitch length. Yeah, it really scalloped. Can you see the scallops? Put it against the white. See, it tunnels in on that zigzag part, where if I were to put the G foot on, and this is, yeah, this is the overcast foot, this bar should hold in the other edge so that it doesn't tunnel. I'll just use the same grain. So it also has that metal guide on the side that helps you to see where the edge of the stitch is. And I'm just going to take it back to the default. Okay, this is the default. You can see it did not tunnel in. I don't have scallops along the edges. Here's the default stitch over here, kind of little, which would be good for the just regular overcasting your edges of your fabric. I don't use this very often unless I'm out and not going to bring my serger with me. That it will do, I like it better with my serger, to be honest with you. I'm going to overcast the edges of it with my serger. It's a lot faster. So you've got a few of these stitches. So let's do it on the white so you can see what the stitch looks like. So here is, and that bar, see this, I can put the fabric right up against the bar so that it's nice and even. And then it's easier to guide than having to eyeball it. And see, that looks very nice. Does a nice stitch. You have other ones here. This one will seam and overcast at the same time. Let me put two pieces together. This works really well on a knit. I don't have any knit here with me at the moment, but this is the closest you get to a serger as far as stitch goes. Okay, and see, that looks like a regular serger stitch, and it gives you a very nice seam. In fact, it gives you a tighter seam than a serger does, because the serger has that extra chain looping in there that makes it good for using on a knit, where this one would be better on a woven. This one is the same thing. It's for seaming. But this one, I believe, is for really stretchy knits. This is slow. I've never used this one. but I have a serger. See, that gives you, this is nice for really ravelly, like a knit, because it does the back and forth and it does it on the side as well. So it gives you a nice sturdy seam. But again, I have a serger. I rarely use this foot or this stitch. The next one is the Blindhem foot. There's no difference in them. They both have the guide down the middle. This one just has a different kind of guide. It's just wider. Underneath, it's exactly the same foot. So either one will work. Now there's two kinds of Blindhem feet, and this is the default one. This one can be used on machines where the needle zigzag width is adjustable. Some machines and the older machines it isn't. You would have to use the other one. Here's the Blindhem. You have two of them. One is for straight stitch or for wovens, and this one is for knits. And what it does 3 or 4 stitches forward and zigzags to the side. You could also do this one with the J foot, but it'd be really hard to adjust it. You would line up the blade with the fold, and I'm just going to take the default as it says, and it's telling me here to use the R foot, which is what I'm using. And oh, of course, you know, this does not happen in real life. Okay, it's perfect. Do this on a real garment and something, and then it misses, it skips, and you have to do it a few times and make adjustments all over the place. But because I wanted to mess up, it didn't. It did it perfectly. You have just little tiny bites here, and it's caught all the way through, so your heels don't poke through it. Now, let's just say it didn't catch. Okay, say it didn't catch. And it was open and it didn't catch. What you would want is you would take your blade and you want your zigzag to move over to the left more. I'll make it go over a lot. Then I would take it, okay, I can't remember whether you hit the plus or the minus, but I do know which way, right and left. So if I want the zigzag to go left more, I'm going to use the left button. I'm going to make it big. And see, it's no longer a number like 3.0 or 2.0. It is shows an arrow, which means it's going to go over 1 more millimeter to the left, or 2 or 3. I'm going to do it 3 so you'll just see what it looks like. If it's a really thick fabric, you want it to take a bigger bite. Okay, so here's the bite, and see it went over considerably. And so when you open it, you can really see the stitching. So if you were on default and it did that, you want to go the other way. So if it was on the default and you got it really big, you go back to the 0 and go this way to the right. And now the arrow points to the right, and I'm going to make it, that's going to make it really tiny. So let's see if this probably won't catch at all. No, it didn't catch because the zigzag's too small for this particular fabric. Now, let's see if I do this one. This one's real thin. Let's see if that little one would be enough to catch it. Because the thinner the fabric, you don't need that big of a bite. Yeah, it did really well. It caught. And it doesn't show, but that's in a much thinner fabric. Here is the alternate Blindhem foot. And this would be on a machine that does not have the ability to change the needle position. You have this bar, was essentially like the bar that's in the middle. This one, the bar is a plastic bar and the bar moves. The needle position has to stay the same, but the bar moves. And this one you set up a little bit differently. You have it on the same stitches. Okay. What you do is you swing it till the needle is in the left swing of the zigzag. So right now this is on the left swing. So you set the needle into the position you want it to pierce. Exactly how much bite you want it to take. And then you move this guide until it's even with the fold. It's the exact opposite. And then now you use the fold, it should catch. They work equally well. Sometimes you can get more precise stitching using this one. The difference is I set the zigzag into the bite first, then moved my guide to match up with the fold, and it gave me a perfect stitch really well. This is the older one, and this is the one I have always had, and to be honest with you, this is my favorite one because of the fact that it's exactly precise and I'm not having to play around and guess. I know exactly that that needle is going to go inside the fold and then it's going to zigzag outside of the fold. Much more precise. I'm going to set that right into the fold where I want it. Okay. And then move that guide to match the fold. See, and it did it perfectly there too. Look at that. It caught every time and it gives me nothing on the front. I have done wedding gowns with this foot and it's been perfect. And nobody, I've never gotten a complaint that somebody's stiletto heel went through. I prefer this version of the foot as versus the default. Most machines come with both. Okay, next foot. There are several versions of a zipper foot. There's this one, and this one. This comes with the machine. My opinion, leave it in the box. This is the worst of all of them. I don't like this foot, and here is why I don't like this foot. Put this down here. Whenever you're sewing a zipper, the problem, you want it to be as close to the zipper coil as possible. Well, look what happens. Let me see. I'll do it this way. Okay, but see what happens is this is going to get caught on the zipper pull every time. So they came out with an alternative one, which is narrower and works a little bit better, but it still can get caught. Not as bad. It tends not to get caught, but it also deflects over it, which means you get a crooked stitch there. My favorite is this one. It's the old-fashioned one. I love this foot because this foot, wherever it goes, it doesn't get caught at all and slides right past without any problem. In fact, somewhere in my bags, I have got my old one from the Singer one, which is even thinner than this, and I like it a lot better. And I can use it. The only problem when I'm using the Singer is that I don't get as much feed dog coverage. It tends to just ride on one feed dog. But I like this one best because it gives you more control. Where if I'm using this one, these will use the ankle. If I'm doing the left side of the zipper, I would put it on one side. And here's the other reason I hate this one. See that? You see that crookedness? See how that's crooked? I don't like that. I'll tend to get more curving. It's want to keep curving inside. See, because this is not flat. I don't like that. I never use this foot, even though it comes with it. I bought this one, and this one is going to sit flat. You're going to have to move your needle. See, it sits flat, so I'm happy with it. However, if I'm sewing this side, I have to move my needle. So I would go to my straight stitch, left needle position. Okay, it works. See, it's working, but to get it close as I want to the zipper, granted, it's okay. You know, yeah, it'll work. It's about 1/8 of an inch away, but I may not be happy with that. I may want it to go right up to a zipper coil, or more importantly, is that you can make your own cord. There are cording feet, but sometimes, and we'll talk about cording feet another day, but sometimes we don't always have a cording foot. So a lot of times, see, that's not letting me get as close as I want it to go. So like, see, it's still kind of loose. And that's all the way over to the left. See, it's still kind of loose, and I don't like that. So if I have just this foot, I'm not going to use it for cording. You can buy pre-made cording, but it's usually cheap, crappy fabric, and it never matches anything, and it never looks good. You can also buy the decorative cording in the upholstery section. Well, you need to get real close to it because it usually has that fancy cording stuff and then like a twill tape that it's attached to, and you can't sew close enough and you see this twill tape. So that's when I would go to this one. You have to unscrew this ankle, take the whole thing out, and put this one in.
And where did you buy this, or where can we get it?
I think it came with the machines, the higher end machines I got. I have one with my Destiny.
Yeah,
Also, if you have
on
any
there.
other high shank or low shank, whatever foot you have, machine you have, you can use any high shank or low shank. This guide slides back and forth. I can literally get this thing right up there. So now I can get really close. Okay, I'm going to set that needle where I want it to go. Then I'm going to move my foot in. And now I'm going to get that cording really close. See, look how tight that is. I have not used this in a good 20 years. This one I used it once when I got the machine, got the class, and said hate it the first day I tried it. So I don't like this one at all. But I like this. I use it for cording and I use it for zippers. There is an invisible zipper foot, but I have to find it. I don't know where I put mine because I don't usually use invisible zippers anyway. You can also use a cording foot to use an invisible zipper as well. Okay. Buttonholes. Let's talk about buttonholes. This has a slider bar and there's an A that you can't see right here. And it should be facing you so you can see the letter A. And I think the new one is called the A+. So this slider bar goes out and your button fits into it. If you have an odd shaped button that isn't going to, or one that's too thick and won't fit in here, just write it down anyway, and you know it's not going to stay because it's too thick, then just remove the button and just, you know, keep there. Usually pulls out. So this is how it sizes the button. With the A so it's facing you. You have to decide, do you want your buttons this way or do you want them this way? Usually I'll take my button and I'll go, okay, I want that button right here and I want it to end right there. Okay, so I would make a T. And this one, it'd be the same thing. Put it on where you want that button to stop. So these always, oh, I'm going to pick my buttonhole that I want. I'll just pick the regular one. It's automatically set up for you. I have my T. You line up these lines with your T. See, here's my T. And place this way. And that's how you start. Okay, then behind, hard to see, but behind here, you will feel a little lever that pulls down. You have a goal post. You have like the two goal posts. This bar goes between the two goal posts, and that's how it sizes it. So now in order to make this buttonhole, it's always going to start backwards. So it does a reinforcement stitch that helps hold the shape, and it zigzags. Okay, and your buttonhole is perfect. Right, and see, it's perfect. If you want it to go this way, you line up your T the same way. And here's what I was going to show you about. See, here's the goalposts. And that bar fits between the goalposts, and that's how it sizes your buttonhole. But every buttonhole is going to be the same size, which is what I like. Okay, and same thing, I'm going to line up. There, it's lined up, and then just hit the pedal. And then you cut your buttonhole. And I use a seam ripper. A lot of people don't like to use a seam ripper because, and they'll stick pins here. Oh yeah, that's too much trouble. So, but if you ever cut the bar tack on either side, your buttonhole is completely ruined. So what I do is I go straight down on one side and then cut halfway through and no further. Come to the other side and then cut it until you meet it. This is a little stiff because it's denim. There. Oh, I should. And then when you feel it get to the middle, then you pop it out. And if it does that, you just trim these little fuzzies away.
What I like to use are these little buttonhole chisels. That's
Yeah,
what
I have
call 'em.
those too. One that we opened. This is the button. It should fit. See, it fits through just perfectly. It's just exactly the right size and fits through nicely. Okay, now to put the button, and there's two different types of button feet. So for this, I'm going to retract that buttonhole lever. This one came with this machine. You have this little front piece here, and it's just a little rubber grip to hold things, and it just sits in place. Okay, this is the button stitch. They all look like that. That's an eyelet. You can also, that uses the end foot, but we want the button stitch. Okay, so say I want this buttoned here. You pick where you want it. You would line up the needle, and you're going to hand walk. See, I don't have it right. So I would scoot this until scoot that button underneath so it's directly under the needle. And then this side, and it's okay. Want it to go in both sides, and I'm going to check that first one. Okay. This button is too narrow, so I'm going to take the width and go wider. It's 3.5. Let's try it. So I knew I didn't get it on either side, and see, I'm getting it both right. And then once you have it, you just hit the pedal and it's going to stop, do a locking stitch, and your button is secure. And you don't have, and it's really secure. That button's not gonna come out for nothing. If you have, I have never, to be honest with you, don't even have to lock your threads in behind. You can just snip them off. And that's not gonna come out. When my husband was working downtown, he he had to wear a uniform. And in fact, when he was in the Air Force, he'd wear a uniform, and every time we buy him a new uniform shirt, the first thing I would do, I wouldn't even wash it or anything, just take it to the machine and sew all these buttons again by this machine, and they never came off. So a lot of times you buy a shirt and you don't even get to launder it one time and the buttons fall off. This is fine for a shirt. If you want it to have a shank on it so that it's loose, then what you do is there's a little space underneath, you just put a pin underneath here, then put your button in. And then again, always test, make sure you're clearing both halves. And now when I sew it in, and you don't have to, you could just raise that up, take this button out, take your thread and clip it. And now you could actually just take this underneath, string it under here, like that. You could take a needle or some fray check and just wind this around. That helps, gives it more of a shank. And so now that button is lifted off. And then this, you could either tie it or pull it through to the back end and tie it. But now this gives you a loose shank. So this would be good for a coat button, because your buttons are usually thicker and your fabric is thicker, and it just works better. This is the kind of foot that comes on the lower end machines. Ours have this one, the M foot. Okay, here it is. It looks like a fork lifter. So you have these two little dots here. You would put your button between the dots, line it up, and usually then I'll put it under the ankle. This is me easier. You're going to shifted it, test both of them again. There, and now let her rip. It just holds the button a little more securely. And in order to get this out, you have to pull forward. If you had, and I'm just going to take that out, just cut it. See, it's secure enough. And you get a nice button. Now, if you wanted a shank button on this one, it's got a built-in pin. I would take this and put it underneath the steam shovel, put my fabric underneath, test again. Now, if I want this one to be a shank, there's a little plastic piece that you can push forward, and it pushes a pin underneath there. See, now same thing as a pin. Let me show you better. Off. Okay, right here you have this lever. It's retracted and it just has that one little bar. That helps it. This one does not have that little bar in the middle, so therefore these sew the button tighter to the fabric in the back. This one has that one, so that helps not to tunnel in and dig in so much. But if you want it to be a shank button, you're going to push this little lever forward, and this little plastic pin comes forward underneath. And I'll just stick that there. And this back. There. And always test every single button. The minute you don't test it, you've shifted it and you're going to break a needle. Or the button. And pull forward. And see, now you've got, see, it's just the right height for a coat. It's nice and just the right height. If you have a button with 4 holes, pretend this is a button right here, that you have 4 holes. You would first start to where you would hide and put it on the first, so you only see 2 holes, the front 2 holes, and do your stitch. Okay. Raise your needle and scoot it forward until you see the second 2 holes. Because with this foot, you can't scoot backwards. You only can go forward. I didn't get them right, but you get the idea. Because if you did the ones in the back, you can't go forward. You can only, you can't move forward. You can only move back. So this will give you the second 2 holes. It doesn't do shank buttons, you know, where it's in the back. That you still have to do by hand. Okay, let's see. I think that's all the basic feet. See, here's one of another open toe metal foot, but this one, I see it's got the channel on the back. This one's got the shank built in. It's from my old machine, but it still works, so I kept it. Another foot that comes with the machine is usually the straight stitch foot. This is a nice foot to have. You can use the single hole needle plate with it, but what's nice is that you get a better stitch using the straight stitch foot. It's a little bit bigger than 1/4 of an inch. It's like a 1/16 of an inch bigger than a 1/4 inch foot. Again, this is going to give you a better stitch because you don't have as much play in the back as you do with the regular general purpose, but it does give you a really nice stitch. Back to the regular straight stitch. And however, notice this is my default, and here's the problem. The left needle position is going to hit the metal. It has to use the center needle in order to have it work. Okay, so here's the straight stitch. And it does give you a nice straight stitch. Some people say what it does is sometimes you get something called laddering. The 1/4 inch foot, you also have a single needle, which is why you get a better stitch. Featherweight gives you it is still today the very best straight stitch on earth. No one's ever come close to it, and why, I don't know, but if you're used to sewing on a featherweight where you've got that absolutely perfect straight stitch, then, you know, a modern machine, no modern machine is going to match that. And I've had some people who, I'm not going to buy that machine because that straight stitch isn't straight enough. Not that anyone ever would notice. I thought it'd be fun to go over the basics again. Okay, guys, that's all I've got for you tonight. If you have any questions or suggestions on what you'd like me to cover in future videos, or if you have any feet you'd like me to cover, then send an email to me at waltzquilt@yahoo.com. Be sure to like, subscribe, share, comment, and of course hit the notification bell so you will know when I upload the next video to YouTube. Thank you so much for watching. Have a great day. See you later. Bye.